Matt Miguez has plenty on his mind, and he's ready to share it with the world. It's time to hear the Miguez Mindset.
Welcome into another edition of the Miguez Mindset here on ESPN 1037 Lafayette and 1041 Lake Charles. Matt Miguez here, looking at the LSU Tigers falling in the Elite Eight to Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes. We'll also talk about the LSU baseball team, who is not having the start to the season that a lot of people thought that they would. Cory Diaz, who covers both women's basketball and baseball for the Tigers for the Daily Advertiser, joins us here on the Miguez Mindset. Cory, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me.
So let's start with the LSU women's basketball team. You were in Albany with the team as they fell to Iowa 94-87 the other night. From your perspective, right there sitting courtside, what went wrong for the Tigers?
Well, I think it was the couple of things. I think Caitlin Clark's supporting cast having the night that it had was obviously very disadvantageous for Kim Mulkey and her team. I think Sydney Offalter I think she had 18 points, which is not what she normally contributes to Iowa on a night in, night out basis. She's not even an everyday starter for the team. And for her to be able to have a night like that is obviously tremendous for them, and obviously helped propel them to get to the Final Four. And then obviously Kate Martin, one of Iowa's senior guards alongside of Caitlin in the backcourt, had a 20-point game. Those are just things that you can't have. I mean, and look, you think back to last season in the Final Four, when Iowa knocked off number one South Carolina, and Dawn Staley said the exact same thing, about her team losing to Iowa that night, because Caitlin Clark had at least from a scoring perspective, had an identical stat line. She dropped 41 on South Carolina in the Final Four last year in Dallas. She dropped 41 on LSU the other night in Albany, New York. Caitlin Clark is going to get hers. I'm not saying she's impossible to guard. I'm not saying that she is impossible to limit and or stop. It's just so hard for her to be contained when she does everything. She rebounds the basketball. She shares the basketball. She had 12 assists against LSU the other night, which is crazy. And she scores 41 points, and these aren't things that's normal Caitlin Clark stuff. Like, I know the numbers sound crazy, but that really is what she does on a night in, night out basis for that team. It's what she means to it.
Yeah.
So LSU was going to have to limit everyone else. They obviously did a great job in the post with Angel and Anissa. None of Iowa's post players had good games. Hannah Stalkey I think she had 6 points, was very much missing the whole night. And they were just going to have to keep the other guards from really getting going. And they unfortunately couldn't do that. And then two, the game was tied at 45 at halftime. You obviously felt really good after, going down by 9 really early in the game. You work your way back, you tie the game. And then when they come out and Caitlin Clark hits that 3 to open the second half, open that third quarter, then it felt like, okay, we're going to have to trade punches here. Well, LSU didn't do that. They went 5 of 26 from the field in the third quarter alone. They shot 19%. All the while, Iowa was running the score up. And so, them going cold from the field, it really doomed them there. That it was just too much of a deficit for them to claw back, especially with, Flage was fighting foul trouble with 3 fouls. Angel in the third quarter had 3 fouls. I mean, their 2 best players were fighting foul trouble. And so it was going to be really hard for them to maintain the right level of aggressiveness offensively and defensively that you're going to need to have in order to, to chip away at a 10, 11, 12-point deficit. And they just never quite do it.
Yeah, you talked about Caitlin Clark getting hers. That had to be the game plan, right? You let Caitlin Clark do what she does, because she can't beat you alone. If you play your style she can't beat you well enough by herself. And so the issue And, when I wrote my game story, we always include a big number in our story. My big number was the 39 combined points between Kate Martin and Sydney Falter, because that was the difference in the game for me. If you slow them down to combine for them to only have 20, you win that game. And because look, again, say Caitlin Clark scores 41 and everybody else combines for 30. 71 points is not going to beat LSU. It's just not going to do it. And so, yeah, I think you're exactly right. You let Caitlin Clark get hers, slow down everybody else, and LSU was just unable to do that. Uh,
Well, another thing too, Matt, was Iowa dictated the pace of the game.
Correct.
And not to say that LSU doesn't like to get out and run and transition and have fast break opportunities, because it does do that. But also when you're in a situation where, again, like I mentioned a minute ago, like Flage and Angel are both fighting foul trouble, sometimes you have to slow the game down. But Iowa was forcing LSU to push the ball even when it didn't want to. And LSU's transition defense the other night was arguably the worst it's been all season long. I mean, the majority of Kate Martin's 21 points
came on the run.
Came off of her
Yep.
breaking off of her defender in the fast break and getting easy looks. That, and a lot of those 12 assists that Caitlin got was very much passes in transition that she found open teammates who were cutting toward the basket. You just couldn't have those things happen, especially when your whole objective when you're trying to defend Iowa is to not allow those around Caitlin to have good nights. And if they're getting easy looks at the basket, I mean, you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah. And so now, obviously a very strong season again for Kim Mulkey's crew, but now Angel Reese declares for the WNBA draft. You're still awaiting what Haley Van Lith is going to do with her career decisions. Obviously, you have Anissa Morrow returning. You have Flage Johnson returning. So you're not going to, take a complete 180 here. But I guess my question, Cory, is what is the direction of this team now, now that there's going to be some roster reshuffling?
Yeah, I think I think as you and I sit here and talk today, and what we know to be true on paper, is this the preseason number one team in the country? No, I don't think so. Obviously, the loss of Angel, is seismographic. She, in terms of what players have meant to their teams, I think there's only one other player, in women's college basketball who has entered their name in the WNBA draft that's going to have as much of a dramatic effect on their team as Angel, and that's Caitlin Clark. I mean, they're the two best players in the country overall, and their effects on their team are almost impossible to measure. But at the same time, as we heard all year long, like LSU this year was not just the Angel Reese show. Like,
Correct.
How Flage Johnson played in the NCAA tournament, I don't think enough people are talking about that. She averaged
Incredible.
she averaged 22 points a game for this team. She was the leading scorer in the majority of the 4 games that they played.
Correct.
She will be the face of LSU women's basketball moving forward. Whether or not Haley decides to return, that's not going to affect what Flage is going to mean for Kim Mulkey's team next year. She's going to be the engine that's going to drive that thing, and she's good enough. I think she's good enough now, and I think we saw it the last couple of days during the NCAA tournament. She's good enough to put the team on her back. And Flage is a little more like Caitlin than Angel was, right? Like, Angel's going to be in the post. That's where she's going to be. She's going to beat you with rebounds on offense and defense. She did have really good anticipation skills when she was guarding and could steal the ball. But Flage does everything. She scores. She passes the ball really well. I think she's gotten better at passing the ball. She's gotten way better at rebounding the ball on both ends. Her ability to finish at the rim is one of my favorite things to watch. She's so good at that. And so I think just having Flage back, and even with another year under her belt, And I know, because I know her so well, she's going to work so hard in the off season to improve even more. She's good. She's good enough to have LSU be a top 5, top 7 team going into the year next year. And then you got Michaela Williams, who's going to have a year under her belt. I would anticipate her having another really good season. Anissa there, again, her size, like LSU's lack of size and experience in the post right now is a little concerning to me heading into next year. I mean, I think Aaliyah Del Rosario has all the potential in the world, but I don't think she got as much playing time this season as, Kim, the staff, us who cover the team,
Certainly.
fans. Like, I think everybody wanted to see more of her this season. So she's still going to have a lot of developing to do next year as the season is progressing. So I think LSU's gonna have to go find some bigs in the portal, because they missed on a couple that they wanted to bring in this year's high school recruiting class.
Right.
So they're gonna have to attack the portal that way. But I would say right now, look, I still feel good about where LSU is. I still think this is an Elite Eight team, with what we know today. And what they find in the portal and how they piece it together, I think could really indicate whether or not this team can really truly aim to get back to the Final Four next year. And it's all going to go back to making sure that they find the right players that's going to fit Kim's system and can come in and not only just be, not only add depth, which is obviously what they lacked this year, but they need people who can come in and play.
Yeah. Now, one more question about women's basketball before I move over to baseball, because there's obviously a lot to get to there as well. Um, One thing that a lot of people aren't talking about yet, and I think it's because the season just ended 48 hours ago for the Tigers, but how important is the offseason development of Michaela Williams now that, like you said, she has a year under her belt? She got significant playing time as a true freshman. How critical is her leap from year one to year two going to be for this team?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's gonna be crucial, right? Look, and I would anticipate, Kim and the staff, approaching Michaela this offseason and telling her that, we might can rely on you to bring the ball up the floor a little bit more for us next season. So I think, her handling the ball is probably going to be something that she's going to work on over the offseason. Obviously, look, she did that at Parkway, like, but that's what every kid who's the best player on their team in high school do. They bring the ball up the floor. I mean, even Angel did it. Um, but I think she's going to have to get better at handling the ball because I think LSU is going to need some diversity and options, in having the ability to do so with efficiency and reliability.
Right.
Look, Michaela's shots there. I mean, she hit 3 threes the other night against Iowa. She don't. Michaela Williams does not need to work on her shot. Her offensive game is. I mean, I thought it was good coming out of high school, and obviously it's gotten better. But like
For
her
sure.
offensive game is awesome as is. Now that's not to say she's not going to go and put up 250 shots a day, because I know her and she will. But I think where Michaela can really help this team, remain on that, top 8, top 4 level in the sport next year is handling the basketball and attacking the offensive and defensive glass even more so than what she did. I thought she did a better job as this season had progressed with rebounding. But she kind of needs to almost kind of mirror her game in that regard to what Flau'jae Johnson did this year. If they can have multiple guards that are able to effectively crash the boards, limit opponents to, one shot of possession, or if they do get a putback, just limit it to 2. That's going to be big for LSU going forward.
All right, let's talk baseball now. Correct me if I misspeak here at any point. They win the national championship last year. You lose critical pieces to your team like Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz, Gavin Dugas. And so far this season, you started off hot against weaker competition. You had a good weekend in the Astros College Classic in Houston. And then you get into SEC play. You lose 2 out of 3 to a improved but still down Mississippi State team. You lose 2 out of 3 to Florida. Both of the, or for sure one of the losses, you probably should have won. And then you go to Fayetteville. Granted, I will give Arkansas credit. They're the number 1 team in the country, and they look like it. But you go get beat up in Fayetteville. And then you come home and lose to Southern. Cory, what's going on?
Really good question. Look, I think we all knew coming in, right, that you don't just replace a Paul Skeens. You don't just replace a Dylan Cruz. I mean, those are 2 guys. I mean, they were the top 2 picks in the MLB draft. I mean,
Right.
you don't have that on your bench. You don't have that coming in as a freshman. It's impossible. So you just hoped. I think Jay and his staff just hoped that they could you know replace those guys with a by committee approach, and just not allow it to to really sort of dictate how it was going to perform this season. I mean, I think for the most part, I mean, the starting pitching staff hasn't, outside of I think the player I've been disappointed in most so far has been Thatcher Hurd. I thought he, coming off of, pitching in the game deciding, national championship game last year against Florida, I thought he'd be really set up to come in and be the ace for this staff. But I even wrote in my preseason predictions that I thought Luke Holman was going to come in and be the Friday night guy for this team, and he has, because he looked really good at Alabama last year, and he was in that role. There's like, I know pitchers probably won't tell you there's a difference between starting on Friday nights or Saturdays or Sundays, but
Absolutely, there is.
There's a difference between pitching on a
Yep.
Friday night in that game 1 of a series, and you're trying to set the tone for the weekend. And there's just a different level of importance that kind of goes along with that role. And so again, I mean, I've been disappointed in how Hurd has looked so far. The bullpen looked good early. Now again, and maybe you're right, Matt, like maybe it was the level of competition that they faced in the first month and a half of the year. But I thought the bullpen was really set up to help this team in and when it needed some assistance in either holding on to leads or keeping the opponent at bay while the offense, who was supposed to be the leader in this team, really sort of power its way back into games. And look, since the first game of the Mississippi State series, LSU is 4-8. And obviously, they've gone 2-7 in those 3 conference series so far. But man, where they're struggling is, man, they can't close games. They can't close out a 1-run deficit late. They can't hold on to leads late in games. You got to be able to do those things. Especially in the SEC, who I would argue this year might be the deepest it's been in some time, especially in terms of like MLB draft eligible prospects. Like, this is probably the deepest the SEC's been in a very long time. I mean, all you gotta do is just look at the standings. I mean, Kentucky is leading the East right now. Like, when was the last time that was happening?
Right.
But they're a really good baseball team.
For sure.
And there's another really good baseball team coming into the box this weekend at Vanderbilt, 6th in the country, 23 wins so far. I think they're 6-3 in conference play right now. It's going to be another challenging weekend for LSU. And, I guess at this point, if you're Jay Johnson, you hope having the guys put their cell phones away when they come into the clubhouse is going to be the answer. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting tactic. I get where it's coming from, right? You want to limit as many distractions as you possibly can. But Cory, my next question is, you brought it up, Vanderbilt this weekend. They go to Knoxville next weekend to play Tennessee. Like, your slow start could get a lot slower if you don't figure it out quickly.
Yeah, no, like you need to figure it out like today.
Today.
And I mean, and I would venture to guess that Jay and his staff are having these types of conversations with their players. Like the sense of urgency, I would say it's been late, but it needs to flip now.
Yeah.
Because if you lose both of the next two series, if you go, let's say they just they get one game out of each, you're sitting there.
4-11 in SEC.
You're 4-11 in SEC play, and right now, like Matt, after 3 SEC weekends, they're 12th overall in the league.
Correct.
I mean that's on the borderline of being able to get to Hoover and staying home, like, which is crazy to think that LSU baseball at any point, in the season would be
left out.
Right.
Yep.
But I mean, if they don't get better, and if they don't get better in a hurry, they could be really looking at a very tall mountain to climb as the middle and late April and May gets here. Because the reality is that you do get a series with Auburn at home, but then you get a series with A&M, series at Alabama, Ole Miss, and then it's postseason time. So there's not a lot of with how the schedule fell for them this year, the SEC schedule in particular. There's not a lot of gimmies for LSU this year.
Right.
They didn't get some of the easier teams that maybe up, like no series with Missouri actually they do get Missouri this year. So you hopeful that like even though you're playing them on the road, you can go up there and get 3.
Correct.
Because Missouri has not looked good at all this year. You need 3 there in a bad way, and that series comes after the Tennessee series.
And you probably need to take 3 from Auburn too, with the way they've been playing off.
Right, exactly. So and I look, and those potential 6 wins, right? Like those aren't going to just be the end all be all. Now it may lock them up, a spot in Hoover,
right,
possibly, right? Because at that point you certainly have some tie breaks and what have you, but man, you need to like these. I think the guys need to see themselves winning games against the good competition in this league.
Yeah, that definitely goes a long way.
Yeah, I'm wondering like where the confidence level is. Is the confidence level where it needs to be for this LSU team to go on the road and compete, at Tennessee, to go to host a Texas A&M team, like they need to see themselves play well, be competitive, and win these games against really good teams.
Certainly. LSU hosting Vanderbilt beginning tomorrow, 6 o'clock first pitch. You can catch it right here on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 Lake Charles. Cory Diaz, he writes for the Daily Advertiser covering LSU women's basketball and LSU baseball, joining us here on the Miguez Mindset. Cory, appreciate you as always, and I'm assuming that we will run into each other tomorrow night at the box.
You would assume correct. Looking forward to getting back in there, and after having been on the road,
yeah,
what seems like the last month or so with the LSU women's basketball team, it'll be good to finally settle in and catch some baseball.
Make sure you follow us on social media at ESPN_SWLA and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be back next week with more Miguez Mindset here on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette, 104.1 Lake Charles.